Hi, and you're very welcome to this year's Exam Revision Leaving Cert Biology prediction videos for 2025. Now, before I get into the predictions for this year, I just want to give a brief overview of the Leaving Cert paper and what you can expect on the day. So there's 3 sections for Leaving Cert Biology. We have section A, which is the short answer questions. There will be 7 questions. You're required to answer any 5, with each question carrying 20 marks for a total of 100 marks. Section B is the experiments. There are 3 questions. You only have to answer 2 of them, and each question carries 30 marks. And then we have section C, which is your long answer questions. There are 7 questions. You're required to answer any 4 questions, with each question carrying 60 marks. The last 2 questions, which is questions 16 and 17, if you choose to answer one or both of those as part of your 4 required questions, you will have some internal choice. So it used to be that it would have a part A, B and C, but you only had to answer 2 of the parts. There is now a part D, but you still only have to answer 2 of the parts of those questions. But if you answer any of the other long questions, so questions 11 to 15, you need to answer all parts of the question. Okay, total marks for the paper, 400 marks. Now I just want to give a brief overview of the course structure, and this will make sense why I'm doing that in a minute. So we can see we have 3 units for Leaving Cert Biology, Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3. And just visually, even glancing at that, we can see that Unit 1 is much shorter than Unit 2, with Unit 3 being the longest unit. Okay, Unit 1 has just the scientific method, which you probably covered in one class in 5th year. We have food, which you probably did at the start of 5th year again, so carbohydrates, lipids, proteins and so on. Their biomolecular structures and the food test, that's all part of that. And then we have ecology as well. Unit 2, a little bit longer, so we have our cell structure, cell diversity, enzymes comes in here, photosynthesis, respiration, those big topics. We've osmosis, cell division, our DNA, RNA, and our genetic crosses, everything to do with genetics is part of Unit 2. And then we have Unit 3, which is the longest unit, and this takes in most of plant and human biology. And we also have our monomer, fungi, protista, and viruses thrown in there as well. So all of the systems will pop up in Unit 3. It is by far the longest unit of all 3. Now, why is that important for us? Well, when we look at the course structure and map that across to our exam layout, we can see here for our short answer questions, there are 7 short answer questions in total. 2 of them are going to come from Unit 1, 2 of them will come from Unit 2, 2 of them will come from Unit 3, and then the 7th question can come from any of those units. The experiment questions vary, we'll come to those in a couple of minutes, and then our long answer questions, you're guaranteed 1 long question from Unit 1, 2 long questions from Unit 2, and 3 long questions from Unit 3, and then the 7th long question could be from one of those units or it could be from a combination of those units. Now, why is that important? Well, the importance of the table above is the fact that Unit 1 comprises just 3 topics, which is food, the scientific method, and ecology. It's the shortest by far of all of the 3, but it accounts for 25% of the exam, because you're guaranteed 2 short questions on it, which is 40 marks, and you're guaranteed 1 long question on it, which is 60 marks. So 100 marks, 25% of your paper, is just food, scientific method, and ecology. Okay, so given the fact that 2 short questions and 1 long question will be asked about this, I would highly recommend knowing these in detail. Now, the experiment questions we get to in a second, we know the experiment questions are going to be 15% of the exams, so if you combine those 3 topics with your experiments, you've passed your exam. Okay, 40% already, just from the experiments and food, scientific method, ecology. Now, section A, your short answer questions, a couple of general tips for these. Recommend spending approximately 30 minutes on these. Answer all questions if you can. So there are 7, you only have to answer 5, but you will have time to answer all 7, so please try and do so. Know your definitions and get straight to the point. And I suppose at the start of the exam, I would read through all of the questions and put a question mark or an X beside the questions you're unsure of, and come back to these at the end of the exam if you have time. And if in doubt, just guess. The biology marking scheme pretty much every year can be quite lenient, and sometimes 1 word is enough to get you the full marks for the question. So please put something down. If you leave it blank, you're guaranteed 0 marks, but if you put something down, there's a chance you could get marks. And practice is the big thing with the short answer questions. The questions are very, very repetitive, and you might see trends from year to year, which I'll come to in a couple of minutes as well for the predictions. So try and get as much exposure to those questions as you can. Section B is the experiment questions. There are 3 questions here with 2 to be answered. These questions are worth 15% of your final grade. You should have time to answer more, so do so if you can, and your best questions will be awarded. There are about 22 experiments in total. I would recommend knowing them all in detail, but if you are struggling with the amount of content that's in the experiments, the changes for the exam will help with that. And I suppose the more common ones that are asked are things like the scientific method, the preparing of the animal and plant cell slides, the isolation of DNA experiment, the germination experiments, and the enzyme experiments. They're the ones that seem to come up more often than others. Now, since COVID, there has been a couple of changes to the paper, and notably one of the changes is we know which experiments can be asked as part of each of the 3 experiment questions. So within question 8, the only experiment questions they can ask are the food tests, the ecology habitat study, the preparation and examination of animal and plant cells using the light microscope, and the isolation of DNA from plant tissue. Okay, they're quite nice experiments. Question 9, the only experiments they can ask there is the preparation and production of alcohol by yeast, the investigation of the influence of light intensity or carbon dioxide on the rate of photosynthesis, the preparation of an enzyme immobilization and its application, and then the other enzyme experiments there. So the effect of pH or temperature on enzyme activity, the effect of heat denaturation on the rate of catalase activity, and any activity to demonstrate osmosis. And then question 10, a little bit more involved here again. We have the investigation of the growth of leaf yeast using agar plates. So that's the experiment where you produce your pink colonies. The preparation and examination of a transverse section of a dicot stem, the heart dissection, the effect of exercise on breathing rate or pulse rate, the serial dilution experiment, the effect of IAA growth regulator on plant tissue, and then showing the digestive activity of seeds during germination, depending on what agar plates you used, and then showing the effect of water, oxygen, and temperature on germination. That's the 3 requirements for germination to happen. Now, if you're struggling with the amount of content involved in the experiments, you can decide today which 2 experiment questions you're going to focus on. Okay, so you might decide, well, question 8 and question 9 there, I really like those experiments. They're a little bit shorter. I'm going to know absolutely everything about those experiments inside out and upside down, and then it means I won't have to know as much about question 10, or you could leave out question 10. I would still recommend having a read through and I suppose having a baseline knowledge of all of the experiments in question 10, just in case on the day of the exam, maybe the experiment question in question 8 or question 9 didn't fully suit you. You're not going to be left with a full question unattempted. You'll still be able to attempt maybe your question 10, but you can decide on which ones you're going to focus on. So I've said to my students for this year, pick a strategy about which 2 questions you're going to mostly focus on, go with that, but still have a read through the other ones as well. Now, section C, your long questions, I'd recommend spending anywhere from 100 to 120 minutes here. Read through each question to help you decide which ones to answer. For example, you might be looking at a question 11 and you might see part A and B are really, really nice. And you're like, yeah, I'm definitely going to start this question. You've done your part A, you've done your part B, but then you get down to the part C and you realize, oh, actually this question might not be the best question for me because I'm not fully sure of what's involved in question C here. So read through all of the questions and see which full questions are best suited for you. Okay, just because the part A looks really nice or just because the part B looks really nice doesn't mean that that might be the best question for you to answer. You have to answer 4 questions. If you have time, answer an extra. Biology is one of those exams where you're not going to be under time pressure. You will have time to answer extra questions, so do so and your best ones will be awarded. Make sure you're including enough points for full marks. So everything is usually marked in 3s, and you can kind of work out how much each question is going to be worth. So for example, if you've kind of worked out that a question is going to be worth 6 marks, you need to have 2 points as part of your answer then to make sure you're getting full marks there. Genetics, photosynthesis, respiration, and ecology are very common topics, so I'd recommend knowing those in detail. And just like the short questions at this point, it's practice, practice, practice. So your exam papers and your marking schemes should be your best friend in the lead up to the exam. Not just enough to do the exam papers using your notes all the time or looking at videos and doing them. That is great, but do try and get to the point where you're able to answer the questions without looking at anything and then use the marking schemes to help you with that. Because at the end of the day, in the exam, you have to answer it without any help beside you. So do make sure you're trying to answer some questions in that format as well. Now, some general tips for the exam. Big thing I would say is it's easier said than done, but to relax. All questions will be based on something you have covered in class. You're not going to be asked something that you've never seen before. It's just going to be phrased slightly differently. Read the question carefully. So is the question asking you to state or list something, or is it asking you to explain something? Because that difference in the question word can dictate how much you're expected to write. Okay, so if it asks you to list something or name something, you're probably going to get away with 1 or 2 word answers there. But if you're asked for an explanation, we're going to need a little bit more detail. Use a diagram if you can. A picture paints 1,000 words, and this can really help with your explanations as part of some answers. For timing, if you get stuck, just move on. The time you're spending agonising over one part of a question you can't do is taking time away from answering questions you do know further on. Okay, so prioritize those ones and then come back. And as I said before, right now, exam papers should be your main focus. Practice them over and over and over again and use your marking schemes to help grade them. Now, what everybody's here for is the exam predictions. So I suppose just to preface this by saying there is no way to know for sure what is going to appear on the exam. So I suppose how I form this is I look at trends from previous years. Is there questions that are usually there pretty much every year? Is there particular topics that mightn't have appeared in a couple of years? And that's what's helped to form this. So try to colour code it as well, depending on their different units that they're in, whether it's Unit 1, Unit 2 or Unit 3. And I've also numbered it at the end as well, and that will make sense in a couple of minutes when I'm giving you an overview of the website as to where you can get resources to help you with your study for this. So usually question 1, pretty much every single year, is going to be a food question. So the structures of the biomolecules, your proteins, your carbs, your lipids, their differences, their roles. Just be careful of that because you will be asked to give maybe a structural role, so it has to be related to a structure in a cell or an organism, or you'll be asked to give a role related to metabolism, so something to do with energy or so on. Now, the second question, remember, we do have 2 questions have to come from Unit 1, and the only 3 topics that they can assess there are food, scientific method, and ecology. They asked a scientific method short question in both 2024 and 2023 main papers. So I would imagine they might move away from that this year and give an ecology short question here. So that would probably involve something like ecology definitions and might throw in here nutrient recycling, so the carbon cycle or nitrogen cycle. That's what I would be predicting for 2025. Your next questions, so the ones coming from Unit 2, I've put down here enzymes. It usually does come up pretty much every year. It's been a couple of years since they've asked a short question on enzymes. So knowing the difference between anabolic and catabolic reactions, being able to describe the lock and key theory, and so on. We have our cell cycle and cell division. So normally when they ask this question, it either obviously comes up as a short question or a long question. The last couple of times they've asked it, it's usually come up as the part C of a long question, or they've put it in as kind of the question 16, 17 as one of the parts there. So it might switch back this year to a cell cycle short question. So that's prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, knowing the difference between the telophase stage in both animals and plant cells. So mentioning your cleavage furrow or your cell plate. And I've also put in evolution there as well. It's been a couple of years since that's come up as a short question. Your Unit 3 predictions for Section A, I've put in the excretory system, so your skin and your kidneys. That's also including the nephron, so just be careful of that. Might be a question there on like phototropism or geotropism, giving an example of those or stating what they are, or possibly start to look at the structure of a neuron. So are you able to label a blank neuron, a human neuron? Do you know which direction that the impulse is going to travel? Are you able to label it? Are you able to describe how the impulse moves from neuron to neuron across the synapse and so on? And then the eye and the ear. So they have come up over the past couple of years. They weren't there in 2024. The ear and the eye kind of alternated there in 2023 and 2022. So because there was an absence there in 2024, I'll be making sure I know my eye and the ear. And I should just add as well there that it's actually 2022, the last main paper that the eye and the ear appeared on. They did appear in the 2023 deferred paper, but it is 3 years since they were on a main paper. So the predictions for the experiment question. So I am predicting for 2025 that they are going to include a question for question 8, very like the one they did back in 2021, if you want to have a look at this one. And this is where they asked a couple of parts of questions about most of the experiments. Might not have covered all of them, but you might have had 1 or 2 parts of the experiments about the food tests. You might have had 1 or 2 parts about the isolation of DNA. You might get another part or 2 about the preparation of the animal and plant cell experiments. So I'll be making sure that I know each of the experiments in detail, because I'm expecting that there will be a pick and mix style question where they ask you a little bit about them all. For question 9, the photosynthesis experiment, so the effect of light intensity or carbon dioxide concentration on the rate of photosynthesis, it has not appeared as a full question since 2018. Okay, it's 7 years since that appeared. Now, are they going to ask the entire 30 marks based off of that? They possibly could, but I am predicting that they could throw in a little bit there about the production of alcohol by yeast as well. So maybe the part A could be about the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration, and then the full 24 marks for part B could be about the photosynthesis experiment. But I would definitely be prioritising the photosynthesis experiment there. And then for question 10, their usual favourites there are the germination experiments. They did ask the digestive activity during germination experiment last year, so I'll be looking at the conditions required for germination this year. So that's the experiment where you have to show that water temperature, a suitable temperature, and oxygen was required for germination. So have a look over that one, and then your heart dissection as well will be another one I'll be having a look over there. Now your section C predictions. This looks quite long because there is obviously a huge number of questions that are involved here. So again, I've broken it down into different units. So you're pretty much guaranteed your question 11, or one of the long questions anyway, is going to be ecology. So knowing your definitions, do you know what a food chain is? Do you know what a food web is? Are you able to draw a pyramid of numbers? And don't forget your inverted pyramid of numbers as well. And then your human impact on the environment. I do think the carbon and nitrogen cycle, if it comes up, might come up as a short question this year, but it is also possible for it to come up as a long question. So making sure that you're covering that no matter what. Photosynthesis and respiration, pretty much guaranteed question here again. Do you know the different stages? Do you know the products? Are you able to give the balanced chemical equations for both? Know the difference between anaerobic, aerobic respiration, for example. I know there's a huge amount of information involved in both of those chapters, but the questions on them, probably more so than most other topics, are so repetitive. Okay, so making sure we're trying as many questions on those before the exam, get used to what the marking scheme is looking for, and just be able to reproduce that on the day. Enzymes, know their protein nature, their roles, how do they act, so be able to talk about the lock and key theory, the enzyme substrate complex, and then the effect of pH, temperature on their activity, and then be able to give a couple of the uses and advantages of immobilized enzymes. And then genetics, pretty much a guaranteed question here again. So do you know the structure of DNA? Are you able to talk about how scientists generate a DNA profile? What is genetic engineering? Are you able to give an application of genetic engineering for an animal, a plant, and a microorganism? Very common question there. Do you know the process of DNA replication? And then are you able to carry out monohybrid and dihybrid crosses? And don't forget, some of those crosses could include incomplete dominance, or they could be a sex-linked cross. Okay, so making sure you get as much exposure to those types of questions as well. And then the unit 3, I suppose the longest unit, what are we kind of feeling for 2025? Again, plant reproduction is pretty much there every year. So the pollen grain development, the embryo sac development. Transport in plants is usually there either every year or every second year. So it's the cohesion tension model developed by Dixon and Joly. Sometimes can be asked to name both of those scientists, and knowing the structure of xylem and phloem as part of your answer there as well. The nervous and musculoskeletal systems, I'd have a look over those, so the structure and functions. Do you know the difference between the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system? Do you know the structure of a neuron and are able to draw that? Are you able to give an account of the actions involved in a reflex arc? And are you able to give diseases associated with both of those? Okay, and a corrective measure if appropriate. Your circulatory system, so are you able to talk about the blood flow through the heart? Are you able to draw a diagram of the heart is a big one there as well. Your regulation of heartbeat, so your use of the SA and the AV nodes. Where are your blood cells produced? And what are the functions of the white blood cells? So they possibly could bring in a little bit there of the human defense system as well. So your B cells and your T cells, making sure you know those. And then another one which comes up every other year, which I'm kind of feeling for 2025, is protista. So are you able to label or draw a diagram of an amoeba? Do you know the functions of the pseudopods and the contractile vacuoles? What's the significance of the contractile vacuole for an amoeba? And are you able to talk about how it expels excess water so it's not going to burst? So again, you can pause the video if you want and take a screenshot of that. All of the numbers will make sense when I go through the platform in a couple of minutes, but it's just telling you where you can go to get resources on each one of those. Now, for joining the video today, you do get 10% off a package for our exam revision website, which I will give you a run through in a couple of minutes. We have hundreds of bite-sized video tutorials, not just for biology, but for most Leaving Cert subjects which are available. We also have PowerPoint presentations, which will give you a little bit of extra notes or information which you might need to help answer some of the exam questions. We have a resource pack which you can download. It's H1 standard notes. You can print them out and use them to help you with your study or your exam questions. We have self-correcting quizzes which you can use to test your knowledge. And then we do have a platform which has access to all of the past exam questions, some mock questions and their marking schemes as well. Now, what subjects do we have available on the platform? Well, we have 21 subjects which are fully completed, which means that we have the video tutorials, we have PowerPoint presentations, we have downloadable H1 standard notes, we have self-correcting quizzes, and we have all of the past exam papers and marking schemes available. So that's available for all 21 of those subjects listed on the left-hand side. If you're studying a subject that's not on that list, you'll still be able to get access to it on the platform. You'll just be able to access though the marking schemes and the exam papers, okay? The videos, PowerPoint presentations and the quizzes and so on, they're in development. They're just not there just yet, but you'll still be able to access the marking schemes and exam papers and get 10% off using the code 2025tips. So you can use that code not just for Leaving Cert Biology, but for any of the subjects which you want to sign up to on our platform. Now, what does our platform actually look like? So when you log into your platform, you will be able to sign up for whatever number of subjects you want. We went through biology today, so I'm just going to have a click into that one. Okay, you'll get a progress tracker there, so it will show you how much of the course you've completed, how many days of a revision streak you have, how many videos you've watched, and how many quizzes you've completed. Now, if we go down here, you can see we have our 3 units. We'll have Unit 1, we have Unit 2, and we have Unit 3. We do also have a section there for exam tips, and we also have an experiment section as well, which I will go to in a minute. So for example, when I was going through the predictions there a couple of minutes ago, at the end of each one of them, I had a number. It could have been 1.1, 1.2, it could have been 2.3, whatever. It's just pinpointing you to the direction of where to go on the website to get access to study content related to that. So if you wanted to learn a little bit about food, pretty much guaranteed question number 1 on the paper, that's in 1.3. So we can click in, doesn't matter what topic we click into, they're all going to look the exact same. We have a number of video tutorials there. We have a PowerPoint presentation which you can click into. We have H1 standard notes, so if you click on that, you'll be redirected to a PDF which you can download or print and use to help with your study. We have self-correcting quizzes, so you can click into the number of quizzes that we have, usually between 8 and 10 questions long. You can click whichever answers you feel appropriate and you'll be given a score, and you can do those quizzes as many times as you want to get to 100%. And then we have our exam questions as well, has all of the past exam questions and marking schemes, has some mock questions included there as well, and also has this handy feature at the top where you can set a timer to time yourself to make sure that you're getting the questions completed within the allocated time. If we go back, you can see there, it is all there for Unit 1, Unit 2 and Unit 3. Everything you need is there. We do also have an experiment section as well, so if you are struggling a little bit with the experiments and need some notes to help you answer the questions there, you can click in on that document and it will redirect you to a PDF file. I'll show it to you now, where it has every single experiment you need to know for the Leaving Cert Biology exam, and then you can use that to, I suppose, decide on what your strategy is going to be for the experiment questions. Now, as I said, you do get 10% off of our platform by joining this video today. So if you use the code 2025tips, you will get 10% off of biology or whatever subject you want to sign up for. Now, just before we go, I'm just going to leave you with some of the reviews our students have left. So these are Leaving Cert or Junior Cycle students who have used the platform and found that they actually have got their grades to improve by engaging with their resources. So I'm not going to read through them. You can pause the video and read through them yourself, but it is really, really beneficial. And as I said, you do get 10% off of the package by using the code 2025tips. So I hope you found this video beneficial. I wish you the best of luck with your study over the coming weeks. Do engage with our YouTube channel and our social media platforms, because not just will we have predictions for biology, but we will have them for other subjects coming out as well. So the very best of luck with your study, and thanks a million for joining us again today.